Hey, everybody, I'm Scott Weichel. You're listening to My Kind of Country. Thanks so much for joining us on a Monday night. I've got a return guest of the show tonight, and he's going to be appearing on quite a few of our programs, and he's going to share some stories about some of the country music legends that he has worked with over the years. And he has not only written some great songs, but he's a fantastic musician, a singer, a producer. He pretty much does it all, and he's worked with some of the best in country music, and it's an honor to have him share some of his memories with us tonight. It's Mr. Curt Ryle. Curt, how you doing tonight?
Hey, Scott, I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you having me on your show. I always enjoy it.
Well, it is my honor. We had such a blast the last time talking to Miss Jenny Collins, and
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear about some more of your fantastic stories. You've worked with just about all of my heroes, so I can't think of a better show than to talk about some of these great people.
Well, there's some funny stories involved in some of these people. You work with them and you get to know them, and people don't realize that they're really just people like we are, and they say and do some crazy things sometimes. And I think this would be a fun thing to talk about if you're up for it.
Absolutely, and I know my listeners will enjoy it too. And heck, even if they don't, man, I know I will. So, well, we're going to talk about Mel Tillis tonight. One of the greatest songwriters and entertainers and singers in all of country music history. And I know you've got some great stories about Mr. Mel Tillis.
Oh yeah, in 1986, I had recorded some songs for a nightclub in Dallas that I was playing at called the Longhorn Ballroom, which was built by the great Bob Wills and owned by the great Dewey Groom. And Dewey came in one night just to kind of lead up to a few funny things that went on with Mel. Dewey called us in his office one night, and he said, I'd like to do a 25th anniversary album. And he said, does anybody in the band write any songs? And nobody raised their hand. And I told him, I said, well, I've kind of dabbled in it, but I've never really written anything. But I said, I'd like to give it a shot. And he said, why don't you write 5 or 6 things and bring them to me? And he said, if they're not good, he said, we'll just do Bob Wills songs. He said, but if I like some of them, we'll record them. So I brought 5 songs back in, or 6, and he listened to them. He said, well, I'd like to record every one of these. And so it kind of surprised me, but we did. Make a long story short, Mel Tillis got a hold of that album and called me on the phone. And that's another funny story, because I thought one of my friends was playing a prank on me. And when I answered the phone, Mel said, hey, this is, and he started stuttering. And I thought, well, who the heck is this? And he said, Mel Tillis. And I thought it was one of my friends. And I said, well, yeah. I said, yeah, and I'm Elvis Presley, and he goes, no, this really is Mel Tillis. And make a long story short, he flew me to Nashville and signed me to his publishing company. And I remember the first week that I was there, he came in from the road one day, and I was sitting in an office writing songs. And he walked in and he said, have you written anything today? And I said, well, I did, Mel. I wrote a song, and I said, to be honest with you, I just didn't like it, so I watered it up and I threw it in the trash. And he said, well, now, he said, let me explain to you how this works. He said, see, I pay you to write songs, and he said, you can't throw my work in the trash if I'm paying you for it. And Mel was funny like that, and I knew he was serious, but he was joking too. But I said, well, Mel, I really hate the song. And he said, I don't care. I want to hear it. So I pulled it out of the trash, and I folded it and picked up a guitar and I sang it for him. And he sat there for a minute after I finished it. He said, do it again. And so I sang it again for him. And a few minutes, he picked up the phone and he called somebody. I had no clue who he was calling. He said, hey, Hoss, what are you doing? He said, could you be at my office in 15 minutes? I got something for you. And whoever he was talking to at the time, I didn't know, apparently said they were coming. So Mel said, we'll just wait 15 minutes. So he left and went into his office. And anyway, about 15 minutes later, he comes back in and George Jones walked in.
Oh my gosh!
And I was like, holy cow! The possum himself, my hero. This was a guy I idolized growing up. And Mel said, Curt, I want you to play the possum that song. And I said, oh, I thought to myself, oh my God, this is the worst song I could ever play George Jones, right? I always wanted to get one of my ballads on him, and but I thought, well, I'm not going to argue with my boss, right? So I said, okay, and I picked up the guitar and I played it for him. And George stood there and looked at me for a minute. And he said, I tell you what, son, if you let me change one word in that song, he said, I'll record it tomorrow. And I said, George, you can change the title. I don't care what you do. If you record it. He said, no, I'll record this tomorrow. He said, it's a great song. He said, exactly what I need. He said, my wife is going to love it. And so anyway, he ended up recording that song that I threw in the trash, and it became Nancy's favorite song on the album. And he called me from the studio. There was a line in the song where it says, people make love these days to pass the time. It's a physical thing where the feelings are left behind. And he said, I want to take that physical out, and I want to say wham, bam. It's a wham, bam thing. And I said, okay, George, if that's, that's what you want to do. Anyway, that song is out there on video, Scott, and you can pull it up. It's called The Real McCoy. And it's on the Too Wild, Too Long album. And, if it hadn't been for Mel Tillis, that song would have never been recorded. It would have been in the trash, and no one would have ever heard it. And I learned a valuable lesson from that. Don't ever throw a song in the trash. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean somebody else won't, But
that's for sure.
That is one of those strange, wacky things that happened early in my career with working with Mel.
That's amazing. That is a great song. In fact, I just played that album not long ago and realized that you wrote the song, so I'm really glad you shared that story tonight, and we'll play that song for our listeners. Before we go, tell me another one of your favorite Mel Tillis stories. I love stories about Mel. They're always so entertaining.
Well, Mel was a funny guy, and everything that he said, everything that just came out of his mouth was hilarious. And I could tell you a million stories, but one of the funny things that happened was we'd been in the studio working for about 12 or 14 hours, and Mel Tillis was one of those guys that just never stopped working. He had more energy than anybody I had ever seen. And but we'd been in the studio, and it was about 12 hours. We hadn't eaten anything. And finally, I just stopped, and I said, Mel, if you want to keep working, it's okay. But I said, man, we got to go get something to eat. And he said, that's all you think about is food. Mel, you haven't eaten in 12 hours. You need to eat something. And he said, all right, well, let's go get something quick and come back. So we went to a hamburger place, and I was sitting there, and they brought my burger, and I looked at it, and I said, Mel, I'm so tired. I see 3 hamburgers. And he said, look, eat all of them so you won't be hungry again in 15 minutes. he just always had these great comebacks, And, I could go on and on about this guy. He was so funny. And I got the biggest kicks out of working with him. And we will tell many more of these stories in the future if you want to continue to do this. But and some of them with Mel, you can't repeat every word he says. Because, he you never knew what was going to come out of his mouth, but he was a funny guy.
Oh, that's great. Well, this is stuff that I love to hear about, and it's history that will never come around again. And if we don't get it recorded and preserved, it gets forgotten with time. So I'm very pleased that you took time to share some of these with me tonight.
Oh, absolutely, and I appreciate you having me on.
Well, we're going to play some Mel Tillis for you, and right now we're going to play The Real McCoy from George Jones. This was written by Curt Ryle, and it was out of the wastebasket, folks, and I'm sure glad that it got saved. All right, Kurt's going to be back with us in the coming weeks to share some more of these great stories, so stay tuned for that. And as I said, right now we're going to play some Mel and some George Jones for you as we continue with My Kind of Country.